was extremely annoying. That was one of the most annoying bugs I've ever seen on YouTube. Absolutely annoying, because it stopped the data stream, and when it stopped the data stream, it also kept the old live session going. So I had to delete the old session in order for it to even allow me to start a new session, even though there's no data stream. So I had no rights. I couldn't do anything. Wow, that was an absolute nightmare. But welcome back, guys. That's craziness. I have no idea what happened. It was probably like a neighborhood internet outage, because it seemed to also affect my telephones, and it affected this laptop. Just a bunch of stuff. You know, stuff happens, right? I'll give everybody just a minute. Man, I had like 15 people watching when it just dropped the stream. It's unfortunate. Anyway, I'll give everybody just a moment before I try and regain my train of thought here. Good to see some of you guys. All right, guys. As I was saying, you can monitor the heart through either your cable or through your ECG leads, which I have currently hooked up. And you switch between those using the lead button. Now, I can tell you for a fact that I have gone into a surgical room when the anesthesiologist is tripping out, the cardiologist is tripping out, because they can't pull up the patient. It's just a flat line, and this patient is very much so not a flat line. And it's the lead button. They bump it, they do whatever, and if it's not on the correct setting, then you're not going to get the correct results. There we go. So here's a crazy thing about these older analyzers. So you see how it's got these adapters. Normally, you want them color coded or something, because if you put them on wrong, you can see what you get on your defib. You get an inverted waveform, so the polarity is backwards. So normally there is apex and sternum, and sometimes they're labeled. But if you ever walk up to a defib and you see that the waveform when it's on paddles is upside down, disconnect your adapters away and get a standard waveform. That happens so often, guys. Very, very often. So there's a couple of things that I really want to talk with you guys about when it comes to these defibs. Some very important stuff, all right? So these defibs, all modern defibs, do something called cardio sync or sync. You can see the button right here. It says sync. And what that does is it monitors your R of your QRS, which is that tiny, or it's that really high point. It's the peak. And it's going to put a dot next to it. You see that? Let's see if I can get it on camera a little bit better. So what it's doing is it's monitoring for the peak. And when it senses the peak, it's going to discharge energy as soon as it can after the peak. And sometimes, I mean, given like right now, it's not very difficult. But when it's on, let's say, an arrhythmia, to atrial flutter. Yeah, it's a little more reasonable. So it's looking for the R wave, and in order for it to be an effective defibrillation, a more effective defibrillation, it has to be a discharge of energy right after the peak. And you have 60 milliseconds from that peak for it to discharge. And that is something that we actually measure with our analyzer. And it's one of the most important measurements that we take when we do our PM is the cardio sync time. So we measured the amount of time it takes for it to energize all the way up to its maximum energy, which for this one is 200 joules. So what I'm going to do is put my analyzer, I don't know if I can show this. I'm going to put it on Defib. No, I don't want to do that. And it gives me 3 settings. One of them is energy, one of them is cardio, and one of them is max. I've never done max. It's energy or cardio. Energy is when you want to take measurements and make sure that it's not off. Cardio is going to measure the timing between your ECG leads when it senses pulse and on your other cable when it discharges the pulse. Okay, so that's what you're measuring. It's going to place that little triangle at the top when it senses the peak on this cable, and on this cable here it's going to discharge within 60 milliseconds, which is not a lot of time, guys. That's a real short duration. You can sense one of my cable connections here is funky because it's acting like it. So you can see the triangle, and what happens in cardio sync mode is you press charge. You're going to count the amount of seconds it takes to get up to the maximum energy. And here's where people mess up. When you're in cardio sync mode, you press and hold the button. You don't just press it. You press and hold. And what it does is it waits to the next triangle, and then it discharges your energy. So press. So you press and hold, and when it senses the next peak, that's when it discharges. And over here on my analyzer, it tells me some very important information. One of them, the most important, is the amount of milliseconds between the sense and the discharge. And on this one, it's 24 milliseconds on this life pack right here. Now, the older life packs, they used to get easily up around 50 to 55 milliseconds because the life pack 12s, the life pack 10s, the larger giant models, those ones, they just took their sweet time to do what they got to do. These newer ones, they're way faster. The Zoll Defibs are even faster than this. They're like 10 milliseconds, 12 milliseconds. This one here is at 24. It's well within the spec. So the American Heart Association suggests 60 milliseconds. The other important thing that my analyzer here tells me, up here in the corner, it says the amount of energy that it measured. So I told it to kick out 200 joules. Over here, it measures 205.6. So in my work order notes, I'm going to annotate that 200 joule cardio sync, I registered 205.6 joules at 24 milliseconds. And all defibrillator analyzers will have this cardio sync analyzer function. I can tell I got some bad cables here or something. But that's one of the most important things that we test on this. And then after that is going to be your other standard tests. One of the important things that we have to remember is these defibrillators also come with paddles. You can see they're labeled apex and sternum. So when we check out these defibs, we also are going to plug in the paddles, and that's why we pull these adapters off. And we put these defib paddles immediately on the analyzer. Direct contact, no gel, no nothing like that. Just put them straight on there. But the first thing that we're going to test is the paddles themselves to make sure that the wiring and all the circuitry here is good, because paddles get dropped, they get slammed around. A lot of stuff happens to paddles, and they do go bad. So the way that you test your paddles is you stick together. You see that nice, perfect flat line that happens? So what you are doing is you are instantly verifying all the cabling and everything in between these two paddles is perfectly good. You can see I can move them around. You're not seeing any blips. See that blip? You see that stuff there? That's what happens when you have a poor wiring connection, either here at the paddles or here at the connector. So if you wiggle this connector around and you start seeing those lines blippity blip like that, that is when you either have a connector or you have bad paddles. So your first test, when you walk up and you're going to test your paddles, put them together, wiggle your cabling around, and check that bad boy and see if it's okay. And then from there, we're going to go, I'm going to set my analyzer back to defib, and I'm going to put on energy this time, and I'm going to measure the amount of output that my paddles are giving me. So one of the best ways to test your defib is to pull the power cord. When you walk up to a defib and you start checking it out, pull your power cord, and I leave it dangling right over in front like this. Oh, you can't see it. Leave it dangling right in plain view. That way there, you know that, hey, I left it unplugged, right? So I'm doing all my energy output tests and everything. I'm doing a lot of shocks. I'm going to do it all on battery because I want to test out that battery to see how good it is. Now, the Defibs, they know how old their battery is that's inserted. And after a certain date and time, it's going to give you an error code and you have to go and change out the battery. But we still don't know of the battery. So that's what we're testing by testing it all on battery. So I'm going to go ahead and set the Defib. Woo! Guys, I stand corrected. This is the first time I've been messing around with the LifePak 20E, and this guy does biphasic to 360 joules. That's crazy. I have never seen a biphasic defibrillator go that high. It's always monophasic. So more power to him, I guess. Oh, that's cooking a patient. That's a lot of energy. That's okay. We're going to test it out anyway. Let's see. I'm going to set this guy to paddles. Okay. You can see I've got a good connection here. It's a flat line. We're ready to go. I'm charging it at 360 joules. Remember, guys, we're doing this completely on battery power. You want to know the amount of time it takes to charge to the maximum energy. And if I remember right, it's less than 9 seconds. So if it takes you longer than 9 seconds, it means your internal batteries are going bad. Okay? So you can see it tells you to press your buttons. You have to press 2 of them. Notice I press that one, nothing happens. Press this one, nothing happens. If I press them together, they're going to discharge. Do not discharge in the air. Always discharge through your analyzer. Ready? Go. So you can see. All right, so it's looking for a heart rate right now. So I discharged at 360 joules. Over here on my analyzer, it's reading 369.2 joules. That one's good. And from here, you're going to select a different energy range. So set it at 300, charge. You want to make sure that you got good contact on this because you don't want pitting or anything like that to happen. You got to make sure that these two surfaces are perfectly defect free because if there's any pitting, any rust or anything like that, it's going to create hot spots on your patient. When you go to energize, hot spots will cause burns. And it's, you know, if somebody looks at your defib and they see that, you know, that's what caused the problem, and you were the last person to touch it and it's got rusty paddles, that's on you, man. And that's not going to be good. Whenever you're dealing with life support equipment, make sure you document everything. And if it's got bad paddles, if they're chipped, cracked, whatever, replace them. Replace them, or suggest to your customer that they get them replaced. Document that you suggested it needs to be replaced, okay? So let's see. That is testing with paddles. I think you guys get it, the paddles. Now, the only other thing that's very important is when you are done with your tests, make sure that your paddles are stowed correctly. make sure that they're stowed correctly. The users almost never have the paddles plugged in. They always use it with this cable here. Never with the paddles, almost never. But make sure that the cable isn't tangled up. Make sure it's nice and organized, that your paddles are actually connected properly. All right. When I leave a defib, I make sure that all the cables are done up nice and neat, tucked in where they need to be tucked in, you know. It's especially important with defibrillators. They grab them and they just run, you know, they take off with them. All right, so let's put this guy back on so I can show you some of the other tests that we do. So I have nothing on it, so I'm going to select paddle. Escape, 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 go back. I really like these raised buttons on this analyzer. It allows me to go through these tests really quickly. So normally 60. Okay, guys, you can see right here, these aren't labeled, but I have an inverted sinus rhythm, which tells you I have the polarity wrong. So I'm going to switch them back around. All right, here we go. So now that I got the correct polarity, everything's set back up, now I can continue on with some of my other tests. So let's see, I had it at 200. Let's put it back into defib analyzer mode, energy high. Okay, so one of the things that we do have to test on these is whether or not it can detect that it's got a good sinus rhythm, and if it does have a good sinus rhythm, then it should not shock. So that is Aed mode. I can do it here, or I can close this fancy little door. So I currently have Defib. Okay, so I press the Defib button and I press analyze, and it should not shock. You can see it's all over the place. There's not a defined R wave for the QRS complex. You see it's just that wavy pattern.
Analyzing.
It should not shock.
Clear. Shock advised.
Oh, it should shock. My bad.
Stand clear. Push to shock.
So it's going to tell you to go ahead and shock. And then over here, I have 207.1 joules. Over here, I wanted to discharge 200. Well within spec, we're good. So you go through the rest of the energy ranges, right? The other thing that we are going to do is we're going to set it to ECG normal 60.
3, 2,
and we want to make sure that it does not shock with a normal sinus rhythm.
No shock advised.
Okay, there we go.
Start
CPR. So we've tested the sync. We have tested the Aed mode and the analyze function. One of the next things that we are going to check is we do like 10 to 12.
3, 2, 1, ventilate.
We do 10 to 12 discharges at maximum energy to make sure that the battery can handle it. So we just take it all the way back up. Energy high. Okay. Again, you got to make sure that it charges in less than 9 seconds.
3, 2, 1.
373 joules. I'm not going to run through all of them, but this is putting a drain on the battery, so we're testing the battery, and at the same time, we're making sure that the defib is consistent. Discharge.
3, 2,
372
1,
joules. So anyway, that is how you test that function. The next most important check that we do after cardio sync and after our energy discharges, we are going to test the pacer function. The pacer sends out a pulse to the heart and it tells it when to beat. So when the heart cannot establish its own cardio rhythm, or let's say it can't keep a steady heart rate, then you can use the pacer function to tell it how to beat at a consistent interval. So let's go ahead and turn it on. I'm going to press the pacer button.
Push analyze.
You can see it defaults to 60 pulses per minute. That's the ppm. And you also set the current. Okay, so you can crank the current way up. And this is a pretty powerful pulse. 200 milliamps. When I test these things out, I run it all the way up. and I run the rate all the way up. It should be what, 180, 170. Okay. And on the analyzer, the second next to defib is pacer. So we go into pacing function. No, we are going to use internal 50 ohm resistive load, and we're going to check for pulses. So the little analyzer, let's see if I can pull this into frame. So you can see the pulses that it's detecting, and it kind of does a graphical representation right here. And at the same time, it shows you how many ppm you have, along with how many milliamps. So these are all things that you're going to document in your work order. So you want to make sure that the pacing mechanism can keep up to its maximum load. Its maximum load is 200 milliamps at 170 ppm. So you're going to start there. I'm at 203 milliamps at 170. Then I'm going to take the current down. Let's take it down to 150. Take the ppm down to 150. Okay, I'm at 150 to 151 ppm, so I would document this 151 ppm. And over on the amount of current, I have 153.6 milliamps. So I'm off by 3.6 milliamps. Let's take it down even further. I like doing things in 100 because that tells you in a real percentage wise what your deviation is. So we're at 100 milliamps, 100 ppm. Over here, I'm at 100 ppm and I have 102.8 milliamps. So that means I'm off by 2.8%. Okay. So generally, when you're working with like ESUs, with Defebs, whatever, if you need a percentage, always take it to 100. And then from there, you instantly know what your percentage is of deviation. So that's the main functionality of the pacer. Now there are a couple other really important things. So we have this. Let's see. You see this little pulse right here? I hope that's picking up. Whoa, she's temperamental, folks. She is temperamental. So this guy. Woo. I'll tell you what, I didn't check this analyzer before I brought it home. And oh, that's interesting. So as soon as it senses a fault, it will instantly stop the discharge. I didn't know that. Good to know. Let's take it back to 100 and 100. Okay, I have 100 ppm. I have 102.8, so again, 2.8% off. Now the other things to do, over here, you have a pause button, and in some defibs, you have a 1 in 4 button. And what it does is it allows it to stop pulsing so the doctor can get a quick glimpse at what the heart's trying to do, if it's trying to or if, you know, it's just failing completely. So that's one of the things that we do. We press pause, and you see how it does one beat, and then it goes for a period of time, and then another beat, because your heart still has to beat. So the pause is doing a 1 in 4. So a 1 in 4 means that for every 4 beats that you tell it to do, it's going to do 1 pulse. And when you release the button, it goes back to its regular rate. So I have it set at 100 ppm. So 1 in 4 is basically what, 25 ppm. And that's all the doctor's going to do. Is he wants to see the heart rate, he's going to hold the button, look and see what the heart's doing, and then you let go of it, and it goes back to beating the heart for the patient. So that's the pause function. Now let's see. This one is a little different. Some of the defibs have a async sync for pacing, and async or sync is asynchronous, which means that if the heart is trying to beat at a certain amount of BPM, if it falls below that, then your defib will take over, and that's called synchronous mode. Asynchronous mode is when the defib doesn't care what the patient's heart's trying to do. It's just going to beat for him. You know, you tell it to beat at 100 beats per minute, it's going to give the 100 pulses regardless of what the patient's heart's doing. And this one does not have async mode. I think it's in the menus though. Pacing, demand. Yeah, so okay, so here they call it demand mode. Demand, so there's demand and not demand. All right, so when we do demand, we come to our analyzer, go to demand, and what it's going to do is it's going to take a sample of your pulses, and what it's going to do is it's going to put your heart rate through your ECG leads. It's going to put the heart rate above and below the demand level, and it kind of, it's a test that we used to have to do manually. So manually, I would have it set to, let's say, 100 BPM. I would have to set this analyzer to 120, and then I'd have to turn it down to like 90 or 80 and see when does it pulse, when does it not pulse, okay? If you guys don't really understand what I'm talking about, I can definitely go into some more detail. Let me put up a sinus rhythm so that you guys can see what I'm doing. Okay, so I pressed the analyze button, and you can see right here that it knows that I'm set at 100 and it's doing under and over. So right now it's doing under 100. So it's set at 80 BPM. And at 80, your defib is saying, hey, we need to get more beats. So that's why you got the pulse still. And when I go over with this button, the analyzer raises the heart rate to 120 BPM, to which, if this was in synchronous mode or demand mode, hold on a second. Let me make sure. Let's go out. Okay, so this is non-demand mode, and you can see that no matter what, it's giving out the pulses, and it doesn't care. We're going to put it into demand mode. It's such a pain in the ass. It used to be one button that you could change the functionality, but apparently they want it to always be in demand mode. All right. Well, that's companies for you. There it goes. Okay. So notice how I put it into over on my analyzer. So I'm at 120 BPM. I set my defib so that anytime it goes less than 100 beats, I want the defib to start kicking in and giving pulses. You can see right here, it says heartbeat, heartbeat, heartbeat. There's no pulses being given out. So I'm gonna come over here to my analyzer. I'm gonna hit the under button, which takes me down to 80 BPM, and you start seeing the pulses. See the pulse? So this is the heartbeat. That's the pulse. Heartbeat, pulse. It's demand mode. So it's basically saying if you fall below the set level, the defib is going to take over and beat the heart for the patient. So that is one of the most important things that we document. You're going to document that you set it at demand mode, you tested below and above at this heart rate and this heart rate, and you just set it that you verified that you have your pulses. Let's see if this still works. I'm going to shut off pacer mode. Let's reboot the defib. So that is pacing in a nutshell. It's the defib actually beating the heart for the patient. I'm glad I got that on camera. Did you guys see that? It was booting up and it shut off on its own. That's really interesting.
Push analyze.
That's weird. I'm gonna have to go back through this footage and see what the hell just happened, because it shut off on its own. And currently it's on battery. So this, make sure that it knows that it's plugged in. I'll tell you right now, this guy's gonna go with me into work tomorrow, and I'm gonna be rough on it. I'm gonna see if I can get it to shut off on its own, just like that again.
Push analyze.
All right, guys. So that is the defib in a nutshell. One of them is the cabling all set up neat. That's an item on my checklist. Is the printer door closed? So that's an item on my checklist. Is the defib plugged in and plugged into a red outlet? That is an item on my checklist. And you can tell there's a lot of cabling to stow. So when I set these things up, I will coil up the main cord in front, and I take the ECG cord, I start here near the defib, go about a half a foot to a foot out, and just start coiling. And I'll rotate the cord, and it falls naturally into a coil pattern like this. Okay, just to make sure none of it tangles up. And then what I do is I put it under the handle from the front like this. So it's clear, you can still see the screen. This they can deploy quickly. They might not even need the ECG leads, because you can paste and everything through the normal multifunction cord. But this is a proper way to stow the defib so that the users can use it quickly, something like that. They can grab it, they can run, do whatever they got to do. Make sure that you set the current date and time in your defibs. It's very important, because later on they're going to want you to pull the report when they have a code. And if the date and time is off and you were the last person to touch that unit, you have some explaining to do. So that's also an item on my checklist. Make sure, because often they have a speaker. Although these ones don't. The Zolls have a speaker on the side, and I would put my new PM sticker over the speaker, and I would rip the old one off. And what that does is, when you're in like an ICU or something and you're checking out these defibs, you don't want to irritate the hell out of everybody with that loud. So what you do is you put the sticker or a piece of tape over the speaker, and I always put the new PM sticker over there so I would never forget it. And it was also an item on my checklist. It was the very bottom one after printer door, cable stowed, plugged into a red outlet. I had is the PM sticker installed. And you know, at that time you'd pull it off the speaker, stick it on the side where it normally belongs, and you're good. So that is the defibrillator, guys. There's, like I said, there's so much more, especially on this. I don't want to go into too much detail on the SpO2 and the Untitled CO2. I'm really thinking I need to devote a whole entire video to that. I've started writing the script. I've already got photos saved and everything. It's quite the process, because it has a lot to do with the type of patient. And I want to let you guys know the proper way to use like Untitled CO2. I just need to get off my keister and start working on it, because it's been the holidays. I've been enjoying all this time with my family. Plus, I've been on call. You know, I don't know if it's a motivation or what, but I just seem to have taken a few days off, and I haven't done any videos lately. But guys, I do have other analyzers, and I would love to do some more videos with you guys on the other brands of analyzers. Some of the menu functionality is way more complex. Some of them are simpler. This one here, it's my go-to favorite. It's all there is to it. All the DNI analyzers, the ECU analyzers, I still like going back to those. And I'll load up a cart with these over the new Flukes for whatever reason, man, and I just get it done. Oh, let's see. What about internal? And they're sterilized and central sterile, and I have nothing to do with those. It's up to central. Make sure that the port is good, and it's up to somebody else to worry about the internal paddles and to make sure that that stuff is good. Yeah, that's a slippery slope. Anytime you deal with central sterile, it's a slippery slope when it comes to whose responsibility it is. We try not to take too much responsibility, because once it leaves my hands, I can no longer certify that that unit is good to go. Okay, like in other words, I could give it to somebody and I could turn my back, go through the door, and they drop it on the floor and crack it. You know, you signed off on it, you said it was good. Well, it doesn't work that way. It was good at the moment I handed it to you. And customers try and do that with medical equipment too. Okay, if you sign off that something is good and it's ready for patient use, it is at the moment that you used it and you handed it over to them. You can't come back 5-6 months later and be like, who did the last PM on it? It doesn't matter who did the last PM 6 months ago, because anything could have happened to that device in 6 months. But they always try and shove it back on us. So guys, CYA, cover your ass, document everything appropriately, and take a firm stance that after something leaves your hands, you have no control on its serviceability. That's up to the users. The users are putting that device or that cable on a patient, not you. So if there's damages at the moment it's used on a patient and the users didn't take notice of it, it's on them. It's not on you, because you have no control over that device, those cables, whatever. The second you hand it over to somebody else, you have no control over it. So be sure to take that stance, guys. Let's see. I've seen Heartroom use a dummy load with a neon flashlight they test before. Oh, that's cool. D-Rod, I have not seen that. Now I'm going to have to do some research. I'm pretty sure I have not seen people do that. Now, the only other thing I didn't cover, guys, is the internal diagnostics with these things, which there is a test load on the Zols. And with these ones, there's like a little shorting plug that you put on the end, and you do like a 30 joule discharge, and it tests the integrity of the cord and the measurement electronics and stuff. I'm not really going to go into that. That's in your service manual and your user manual. The users should all know how to do that test, and they do. Your nursing educator should know that inside and out how to run that test. So that I covered that there. Interesting. So I did not know that that they had a little test load that they would hook up. Yeah, so that's a good question. Because of the situation between my facility and recording within the walls of the facility, and I would not be able to do videos like this in my office. It is what it is. Whether I do it on my own time or whatnot, there's a no recording policy. I'm going to bring stuff to you guys as I see it. Maybe I'll show you guys how to do a proper incident investigation, because I have done several of those, and some of them have been loss of life or high dollar loss situations. And it's one of those things, nobody ever shows you how to do an incident investigation, and I think we should dedicate some time to that so that you guys are doing it correctly, because I see way too many people that do it incorrectly, and you either look like a jerk off to your hospital administration, or you're setting yourself up for failure when it comes to maybe some legal situation down the road. Anyway, let's see. What else can I read here? The LifePak 12 goes at 360 joules. I'm actually very surprised about that. You're absolutely correct. That is a hell of a lot of energy, guys. 360 joules biphasic. Dennis, you are absolutely correct. This guy here, it's going to get isolated because it shut down like that. And I'm going to see if I can duplicate that tomorrow, which means I'm also going to put it in pace mode. I'm going to do some pacing, and then I'm going to shut the power off and get it to go back into normal defib mode. and see if it can do it. Because if it shuts itself off like that again, that's a problem. And if you guys ever have a situation where you don't trust the device, especially one of these, ship it back to the manufacturer, guys. Ship it back. Do not even think twice about it. If your hospital says they don't want to pay for it, say, who cares? Do not give it back to the customer and put it back in service if there's any question whatsoever that of its reliability. And if it was used on a patient and there's a situation, I don't care if it was user error or not, ship the defib back to the manufacturer and have them give you a full write-up. I'm telling you, do it. Because what they'll do, have some doctor that will say, hey, isn't that the defib that messed up a month ago? It might not be. They all look the same, right? So ship it back to the manufacturer if you have an incident investigation involving a patient, them to recertify it. Now, there's a lot of devices that you can't. Like today, I did an incident investigation on a rapid infuser. There's no need to ship that back. It's not a life support device, although, yeah, I guess it is. But it was something well within my capabilities. These defibs like that, you see how it shut off on me when I switched between modes? I'm going to try and duplicate that. I'm going to take this excerpt of video, and I'm going to go over this in slow motion. I pressed the button once, and I pulled back away from it, so it's not like I double pressed the button. And if anything, I'm going to take that video footage, and I'm going to send it to these guys at Physio Control, and I'm going to see what they say about it. Let's see. What else can I say? Date and time on life support equipment is paramount. Date and time. It's so important, guys. I cannot stress that enough. I am the guy that has to come in every time there's an hour change for the daylight savings. So trust me, we have to go through all these devices and we have to set the date and time. I know that there's a Wi-Fi capability to do that. It's up to your hospital to purchase that capability. I can't say that my hospital always does that, or you have Wi-Fi reception in some of the areas. So we still have to do a walkthrough, and we still have to verify that the hour reset. Oh my gosh, there's so much stuff here, guys. Are you following manufacturer procedure and recording values, or just departmental procedures and checklists? Ryan, that is a very, very good question. Manufacturers of these guys here, they have checklists, and it's in your manual. I highly suggest you only follow the checklist. Now, me just running through the test like that, do not think that this is a PM, guys. This is not a PM, all right? I'm showing you the functionality and explaining some of the background to that functionality. That's it. These devices are very complex. There's so many tests I didn't do, like the 60 hertz Knox test, the leakage check, and all that, yada, yada. Guys, there is a lot of stuff. And to PM one of these, it's going to take you well over an hour. I mean, these guys that can do a defib PM in 5 to 10 minutes. No, you didn't. All right. No, you didn't. These defibs, especially since they're getting more complex with the integrated SpO2 and Untitled CO2. Again, we're going to go over that sometime in the very, very near future so you guys know what that stuff even is. But when you check out one of these defibs, you check out the whole stupid thing, and it does take some time. Let's see. Amy come out with a new certification. Oh, certified associate. Shane. Oh my gosh. Oh, Shane. You know something? If you want to go for it, go for it. But I'm telling you right now, if you have, because they advertise that you can get this certification without even having, that is so wrong on so many levels. That is so wrong. And every single biomed I have ever talked to about that new associate, CBET, whatever, it basically holds no weight. I don't know if it's a money grab on Amy. I do not know what's going on with that, but I can tell you right now, if you've never set your foot in a hospital, your certification does not mean nothing to me. I mean, it's no different than somebody going to a good school versus a bad school. I mean, if somebody graduated from CBET versus, you know, DeVry University or something, I mean, a CBET graduate, College of Biomedical Equipment Technology, their graduate degree is going to weigh more than the other place. This one here, this one is I don't know. Certified Associate in Biomedical Technology. Ah, that's so crazy. Guys, if you want competition, I say go for it. Regardless of what biomeds like me say, if you have the cash flow and you want to invest in yourself like that, please do it. I would never tell somebody no. Do it, because if you have that and somebody else doesn't, your chance of getting the job is obviously better. So go for it. Now, as far as somebody like me hearing about a certification for people that are still in school for completing your degree in biomed, to me, that's almost cringeworthy to me, because the day you set foot in your hospital for the first time, it's going to be such an overwhelming experience. You're going to feel like you're underwater for the next 6 months of your life. Okay, there's so much stuff you're going to have to learn. You can tell all the stuff I'm going over here is nothing, not even a drop in the bucket compared to what you're going to have to learn when you step foot inside your first hospital. And that's why, like, this degree, it's like, man, if I had somebody that had 6 months experience versus the CBET that is an associate's, I'd be like, it's had 6 months in the hospital, because there's so much you learn in that 6 months. Who should do the investigation, the biomed or the vendor? That's a good question, man. It's up to hospital management ultimately. You know, it's their ass. So the most important thing is if I was the last one to touch this defib, I should not be the person doing the investigation. Even if I'm the most senior biomed, that's one of those things where when in doubt, ship it out. Okay, so ship it out. Let them do the write-up. Now, the reason some investigation might be to save money, but it's also because you have some cover your ass. Okay, because if there's something you didn't do wrong, like do right, like change out the batteries or something, you can put it under the rug. You can hide that type of shit when you do your own investigation. But what I'm saying is please do not falsify documentation. People can find that. Like, these devices are smart. They know when you disconnected the battery. They keep a log of that stuff. They keep a log of every key press. All right. So if you are not doing your PM correctly and somebody wants to go through and see what quality PM you're doing, all they got to do is pull the key logs. Okay. So guys, follow the checklist and do your PM correctly. Let's see. There are some weirdos here, man. There are some weirdos on the chat tonight. I appreciate that, you guys. It keeps me in lighter mood. Internal meetings with risk management. Guys, tomorrow I'm going to have to probably answer to hospital administration on my investigation today. It was a last-minute thing where I sent out my findings in an email to the directors, and I went home for the day, because all they got to do is call you back in, and it could take another 2 hours of your life. And I already did my investigation. So anyway, those guys did it in 10 minutes. They lick and stick. Oh my gosh, guys, these things right here are extremely, extremely important, especially right now. My defibs, you think it might be in an area where it never gets used. Well, guess what? Tomorrow it's going to be halfway across the hospital, and it's going to be on some COVID guy's bed. You know, if you knew how many times I hear throughout the day, adult protected code blue, which, as you can guess, adult protected code blue. Code blue means crashing. Somebody grabs a defib from someplace. It doesn't matter where. They just grab it and they run. And protected is what we hear when it's a COVID patient, usually. So there are a lot of people that are crashing out there right now, okay? And it's an extremely serious situation. And there's so many people that are probably not in a good way anyway, and they're dying. Because of this, we got to make sure that our equipment is in top shape, not just for the patient's sake, but for your sake. Because if you're the last guy to touch it, I'm just saying, make sure that your documentation is lined up. Because whether or not that patient was going to die anyway, they always try and pin it on the equipment, and they always try and pin it on the biomed. Every time, guys. If you think that no, they wouldn't do that to you, you're in the wrong career field. I'm just telling you right now. Every single time they try and pin it on the equipment or the biomed. You know, they could have chucked it down the hallway, half of it's falling off, they used it on a patient anyway. They're going to say, hey, the biomed should have caught that. You know, it shouldn't have been in service. That's not your problem. They decided to use that equipment on a patient. It's their liability. It's your liability that you maintain the documentation and the correct PM procedure. Do the checklist. Take a photo of the checklist and attach it to your work order and save it, okay? I think I beat that horse enough. Yeah, not a good thing if a defib can't shock an emergency. Just had a LifePak 20E show some funky errors during a PM under warranty, so I shipped it out. CYA, guys. CYA. They also say it's the cost of doing business, all right? Because your hospital might not want to ship it out because it's going to cost, what, $800, maybe $1,000 for them to do a PM inspection. It doesn't matter. Even if it costs $4,000, that's a drop in the bucket compared to litigation expenses when a patient's involved. Ship it out. Let the manufacturer send you back a report that says, you know, all the tests they did, whether or not it was good, and your work order. Let them do the work. Let them assume the liability. And I'm saying, defibs are just one of those things. Just if there's a patient incident involved, ship it out because you want the most correct statement. The manufacturer's trying to cover their ass too. So, you know, they don't want the equipment to be defective, but if it is, they're going to take ownership for that, for whatever defect it is. They're going to fix the defect, and they're going to give you a report. It's beautiful. What wouldn't you like? Let's see. I'd rather invest on IT networking than that program. Oh, man. Guys, Dennis CompTIA Net Plus or CCNA certification. What is CCNA? I don't know if I know that one. I'm going to have to do some research on that, Shane. CCNA certification. Huh. I've heard of it someplace before, but I just can't put off. Is it Canadian? I don't know. I'll have to look into it. Hospital networking equipment is often Cisco. Yes. In most of the hospitals I've been to, hospitals have the biggest budget for IT every time. IT takes the cake. If they want a new server room or something, ta-da! The hospital magically comes up with the money because you have liability. They want to make sure that all their physicians, everybody has the best access to the fastest possible network. And they want to have a network that's semi-future-proof, you know? So they try and get the fastest networking. Like they'll have Cat 6, Cat 7, something like that running through the corridors. I mean, trust me, hospitals spend major money on IT infrastructure. And guys, if you're looking for a cool job that hardly anybody does, I'm telling you, clinical engineering networking or medical networking or IT liaison, whatever you want to call it, it's the future for biomed. All right, all these guys that want to talk about whether or not, you know, we're becoming part of IT, we're becoming part of IT anyway. This guy here connects to a network. All right. And this is just nothing, you know, it's just a defib. It just does a time server, but it still connects to the network. So that means it has to have MAC address allotment in the network. It has to have an IP address, whether or not it's dynamic or static. You know, it connects to the network. You know, a lot of devices do. So it's the future, guys. Medical networking, and there's not so many people that do it. And once you get into medical networking and stuff like that, then you can get into like PACS administration, which is the picture archiving system. Think about it as like a giant hard drive that stores like all your diagnostic X-ray imaging, all your CT studies, all that type of stuff is saved on your PACS. And those guys make money. Let me tell you, PACS guys make well over 100,000. At least around here. I mean, if you're good at what you do, man, you're going to make some money. Let's see, what else we got? Biomed will get thrown on a bus every time. I cannot tell you how many times I've been thrown under the bus. And every single time I've been saved by my own documentation. So document, everybody stays in the loop when you document stuff. Like today, I not only filled out my work order, I print and it goes in my CYA drawer. I've got, drawer in my desk. And also I took screenshots of like all the sensor readouts on this device that was attached to the work order. And also I printed out, that screenshot showing all the sensors, all the pressures, all the temperatures, all that was on this service mode of the Belmont. And I attached that printout to the print. So then I sent a copy to my administration, which is the director of clinical engineering. And then I sent a copy to the OR director. And the only reason I sent one to the OR director, not only because I have good relations with her, but my boss was currently in a meeting with somebody else, and he forgot to tell me, or he didn't know, that there was a hospital administrative incident committee that met at today. And he was in a meeting with somebody else when this other meeting was going on. And I wanted the hospital administration to know the most accurate, up-to-date information on this device. Normally, I wouldn't jump over my director like that, but he knows me. He knows that my relations with OR director, because I used to be the OR team leader, and my documentation is so thorough on these work orders that he doesn't have to like edit it for language or anything like that. I speak in a how could I say it? All my emails and everything are extremely professional, and they're extremely well thought out before I send it. So I sent that to the OR director. We'll have that pop up on her computer while she's in a meeting with the hospital administration, because other words, it looks like Biomed is not paying attention, or they don't feel like these meetings are important. Plus, I want the hospital to know the equipment's okay, right? And here's my proof. All that's listed in my work order, and it's all listed in the email as well. So when you send us something out, make sure that your management's in the loop. But my manager, he knows that I've been down this road before. I know exactly what I'm doing, and I'm one of the only biomeds that talks to like hospital level directors, no problem. Because I don't say anything that's going to get me in trouble. I don't say anything that's going to make my department look bad. It's all about keeping it professional and saying just enough for what they need to know. Everything was thoroughly documented in the work order in exacting detail. Okay. If they need to look it up, they're welcome to. I'll take a copy that's printed out their office. I'll do it tomorrow morning if they want. But anyway, I think I beat that horse enough. Document. Those CompTIA and CCNA is a winner, means salary increase. So here's an interesting, okay, Cisco Certified Network Associate. I have heard of that. I've never went for that one. I've gotten my A+ certification and Security Plus. Never gotten the Cisco networks. I don't know if it would matter too much to a Biomed, but if you were looking for one of those IT or technical jobs, then for sure, man. Plus is more, yeah. Net Plus is a good generic one. CCNA is good to have, but it's hard. And now I'm definitely gonna have to look up that Cisco one. I deal with networks, but not to that level. I would rather study up on regulations. I'd rather study up on clinical applications. See, that's the thing is, a lot of biomeds will go up to a device. They know how to do discharges or something like that. They don't know the clinical applications of how or why you do some of these tests. A vast majority of biomeds have no idea why you do this test. It's just on the checklist. This is the difference. I have made it like a point throughout my entire career to try and understand why. I'm a why guy. I have to know why we do some of these tests. In other words, I don't want to do it, right? Well, manufacturers don't put tests out there because they have no reason for it. There's a reason for every one of these tests. So between contacting the manufacturer and finding out why do we do this, to reading up on the manuals, I watch YouTube videos on this stuff. There is so much information out there on this. I'm just trying to relay a little bit in a truncated form to you guys. Let's see. CC good to have, but it's hard. I recommend Pluralsight for video courses on IT. You know, I've never tried that. I've heard of them, Pluralsight. Grace Nitrac for hands-on labs. You can start with Cisco simulation program called Packet Tracer, which is free. Interesting. Again, I'm probably gonna progress down the biomed side instead of the IT side, which is weird because computers is my thing. But I get more enjoyment out of being around patients and being around doctors and solving problems. That's what I do. So when it comes to like networking and stuff, some of that's boring. And a lot of people, it's a very competitive work environment. To be a really good biomed, though, I mean, there's a lot of biomeds, but to be a really good one that interviews really well, you know your stuff, you can talk to people, you're very literate and well versed on medical applications. I mean, if you can talk the talk and walk the walk, I would say there's a lot more biomeds that cannot do that versus IT people. I know lots of great IT people, man, people that really know their stuff. So it depends on where you want to go. You want to go more clinical or you want to go more IT technical? D-Rod, it is the absolute paramount. See, the difference between biomeds is going to be whether or not you know the clinical side, because that's the only side that relates to nurses and doctors. That's it. They don't care about the technical side. They don't care at all. Even when they act like they do, they don't care. Now, if you tell them that, hey, you're not supposed to do this when a patient's doing this because of this, then they relate. But if you say, no, the man says you shouldn't do that, well, in the back of their mind, they're thinking, why not? Why can't I? So in order to relate, especially to physicians and surgeons, you have to know what they're talking about. And I can't tell you how many times I take a little pad of paper with me. Actually, sometimes on my note right here, I pop out the little stylus and I write down what the doctors are telling me. If they say I want to do a cardio sync on this guy, and when we're experiencing a Defib on this or that, it wasn't doing this, I'll write those notes down and then I'll go back and do my research. Sometimes it might be a user error. Sometimes the device really might be boogered up. You never know. I will also go through the morning caseload because I have access to all that, right? So if I see a type of case that I've never heard of before, and it's going to take like 10 hours or something, and I will write down what the case is, and I will go back and I'll research it. So if you want to figure out how to talk to somebody, you have to do your research. And it's going to be a lot of notes, a lot of learning. And what's really cool is there's YouTube stuff on almost every surgical procedure you can think of. If a doctor comes in and says he's got a TAVRs in the morning, he wants this device, and this device in the room, well, you can be like, yeah, okay, sure, I'll help you out. But then you go home and you do your research on a TAVRs and you figure out it's a crazy complex procedure. It's cutting edge technology. Do your research, watch a video on it. There's videos that show you how they do a TAVRs in real time. So tomorrow morning when you're in the room and the doctor's sitting there and he's talking about what's going on, you know, who's going to do what for this case, you know what he's saying. And every once in a while it's going to save your bacon because they're going to ask you, hey, can you do this? Can you do that? And because you did your homework, now you know what he wants you to do. That's happened so many times, guys. Let's see. Good night, everyone. Keep up. Thanks, Dennis, man. I appreciate that. I gotta probably get what time is it, man? Holy cow, it's 9:30. Oh, guys, I just tend to talk so much. I talk so much. I'm so sorry that I just go off on a rant. I find it frustrating when I go for service calls. The nurses are all nice, but when I'm going to an inspection, they don't want to give me a time of day. Oh my gosh. Woo! You want to see some crazy stuff happen? You tell a nurse that you're doing an investigation on a piece of medical equipment. It could be your best friend. They could buy you lunch and donuts in the morning, and I like donuts, guys. They could buy you donuts in the morning, and then they find out you're doing an investigation on something that potentially could cause, a reprimand or something on their part. They're not your friend anymore, not even a little bit. It's I tell you, I've been down that road, man. Unfortunately, you just got to live it up for it, and anybody's going to throw you under the bus. That nurse that's your best friend will throw you under the bus tomorrow. It's going to happen. Do you want to have the deer in the headlights look when nurse or doc starts describing what's going on with the device? Oh, I've got so many different. So, man, back when I was at junior level biomed, I had a perfusionist who was an excellent guy. He showed me what was going on with the heart surgery. And, you know, the anesthesia guy has got the drape that comes up to here so he can look over the site, but it blocks out splatter and stuff like that from when they're doing heart surgery. So it says blue drape, and the perfusionist sits off to the side here, right across from the doctor, because they communicate back and forth quite often. And the perfusionist came up behind the anesthesia guy, and he said, "Hey, just come on over here, man." And he's like, "See right there? He's going to do this." And then the physician assistant down at the end, he's harvesting a vein. They're going to test it for compatibility and for integrity. And then he's going to ask me to go to cardioplasia. I'm going to do a bicarbonate drip. And, I've had some really good doctors in my day. And establishing this relationship with your provider, they're going to help develop you as a biomed so much more than me or than any book ever will. Use your users as a resource. If you say, "Hey, what's that type of procedure? I don't understand," or "Why are you hooking that bag up to that side of the pump?" They'll tell you, "Oh, that's an irrigation. It's for bipolar. It's because with particular types of tips that the doctors are using, the tips get too hot, so they use the irrigation so material doesn't stick to the tips." It's stuff like that. You find that out by talking to your user. Use them as a resource, guys. And that's why you don't want to make enemies of your users at the same time, because it's a synergy relationship. Been looking a bit and more beginner in the IT business. It sounds like your job's 75% paranoia because everybody might be your next enemy. Something? If you document everything in your work order, like 75% of my job is paranoia, then you're going to be all right. You're going to be okay. It's not paranoia. It's reality. Okay. Paranoia is the assumption that somebody is out to get you or turn on you in a heartbeat. That is true. That every single time. I'm not saying like, "Hey, maybe it's not going to happen." It's always going to happen. They're going to blame the equipment. They're going to blame the person that touched it. It's not paranoia. It's going to happen. Okay. Paranoia is the assumption it's going to happen. This is a certainty. Okay. I'm telling you for a fact, it's a certainty, but this is our way of combating that. You, as a good biomed, you should be taking photos. If somebody smashes a piece of medical equipment, you should take a photo of the damage, attach it to your work order. When something's repaired and it comes back from the manufacturer, you take that printout, you scan it in, and you attach it to the work order. You document everything that you found when you walked up. Cable was damaged, battery was low, unit wasn't plugged in. You could say, found some pitting on the electrodes. You could say that you found consumables were out of date because the expiration date's off. Document everything. If anything, it's not really paranoia. It's you being a better technician. As a technician that could help save somebody's lives, you should be documenting this stuff as good as possible. Now, if you have a poor level of attention to detail, biomed's probably not for you. When you walk up to something, I tell you what, I walk down a hallway, and I walk fast, guys. I walk like this. When I'm walking, I'm looking like this. I'm looking through all sorts of stuff. People think it's funny. I will find problems fast, real fast, guys. I can see cords that are unplugged. I see casters that are bent. I see items that are about ready to fall. I see stuff like that fast as I'm walking down hallways. My campus is huge. And by me doing rounds, I can find stuff like that and try and solve those problems. But at the same time, I'm taking photos. Like my phone is full of photos, y'all. I'll tell you what, man. If you guys see, my phone is full of photos of stuff that I found, stuff that's broke, stuff that's expired, all sorts of stuff. You know, I'm snapping photos and documenting it as I'm going through my hospital. So it's not paranoia. It's just you being a better technician. Tech school, college, or both. You have another option there. Military. All right. If you don't want military, then tech school, college, that's up to you, man. Depends on how far you want to go, what you want to do. If you just want to work on medical equipment, but you don't want to the sky, you can work for a third-party medical company. Like, hell, you could work for Physio Control and never be a biomed ever before. You could work for Hillrom and never have a technical background. You could come from driving around Grubhub and go working for a company like Hillrom, fixing surgical, not surgical, but patient beds. I mean, you never know. I always say, like, apply for every job, regardless of whether or not you think you're going to get it. Apply for every job, and every time use it as experience to advertise yourself better. Oh my gosh, let's see. Smoke Fox, don't even feel bad about it, man. I have viewers from all around the world, and this is so humbling that y'all are like tuning in from all these remote locations and listening to me. I'm very glad that I have something to do with helping y'all out. This is just a hobby to me, as you can tell. Like, you know, I've got all sorts of hobbies, and just one of them, man. So I look forward to seeing some of y'all and working with some of you guys in the future, because I'm going to be around for the next 20 or so years. You know, I'm 40 years old right now, and shoot, I'll be around for at least 20 years, hopefully, I guess. But I love what I do, man. If you can't tell, I love all of this. I love interacting with people. So some of you guys, if I help you be a better biomed, then you know something, I look forward to working with some of you guys in the future. Maybe at some conference or something, you'll see me and walk up to me and say, hey, what's up? I always love meeting people, man. Oh, let's see. Thank you so much. I definitely appreciate that, man. I am here to help you guys out. And, you know, by doing this research, even by doing this public speaking, as embarrassing as it is, I welcome you guys to go back to some of my first videos and look back on how I interact with the camera. We all are extremely nervous when we start this. We're nervous because of criticism. We're all nervous because we don't know what we're going to say. And look at this. Everything I'm doing here is improv. It's improv. So if I get something wrong, you have to forgive me. I am talking for like 2.5 hours on improv. Fairly complex stuff, isn't it? So when I started this venture, so that's me improving as a biomed. Is I'm improving my knowledge of equipment. I'm improving my ability to communicate. So guys, I'm learning as much from you guys as you are from me. Trust me on that. Sometimes it feels like paranoia. No, it's true. They will throw you under the bus every single time, and that's why it's not paranoia. It's a fact. All right. Guys. Anyway, guys, I think I'm experiencing some connection problems on here again. Thank you all very much for staying here and tuning in on Defibs with me. Guys, this has been a very awesome video. I love talking to y'all. I love interacting. This is pretty good. So I like this format where I can sit here and answer questions and talk about devices, because when I script out a device that's this complex, it is just going to be prone to missing information. And although this is improv and I probably got some stuff wrong, at least I can get some interaction with you guys and you know, help you all out with some of these things that people see on Hollywood movies and stuff, and they're like, oh man, it's so easy. It's not that easy, guys. These things are very complex. They take time. Do your time, document everything. I am going to go ahead and go inside and put the kids to sleep. Thank you all for staying tuned. I'm hoping to get another video out before the new year, but if I don't, I will see you all in 2021. Thank you so much. I hope you had a wonderful Christmas, because I know I did. I'm on call. I could end up working throughout the night. I never know. So y'all, it's a quiet night for you guys too, all right? Thank you all, guys. Y'all have a good night.